Hello and welcome to the Rewind, where we dive into the making and legacy of various films from cult classics to award-winning masterpieces. Today's film is Youngblood, the 1986 sports drama that stars Rob Lowe as Dean Youngblood, a 17-year-old ice hockey prodigy who leaves his family farm in upstate New York for northern Canada to play junior hockey for the Hamilton Mustangs, where he quickly finds out that to skate with the big boys, he needs to be made of tougher stuff. It's a part coming of age movie, part sports drama, and all around entertaining slice of 1980s filmmaking. Youngblood also stars Patrick Swayze, and also has a young Keanu Reeves in his first actual feature film performance. Some people might miss and see him in the film. He does have a couple scenes, but it's entertaining to see both Swayze and Reeves in this movie before they even did Point Break. So I thought that was a really cool thing. And talking to me today about Youngblood is film journalist Paul Rowland. So you can check out his work at Money Into Light, where you can check out his film interviews, essays, and articles, and many more. I'm going to have the link in the show notes below. And Paul, I thank you very much for joining me today.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to be back.
Youngblood. This is a movie that brings back a lot of kind of like nostalgia for me because I remember watching this when I was younger. It was on TV one night here, one late night here in Australia. I must have been, I don't know, 11, 12 years old. No, I don't think I was in high school yet. And I saw Swayze, and I always been a big fan of Patrick Swayze. But at that time, I had already seen, Roadhouse and Point Break and all that kind of stuff. So when I saw that he was in it, I stuck around and watched it, and I found it to be incredibly entertaining. Watched it again recently. It's still entertaining. It's I think like my 11, 12-year-old self had different kind of reaction to it because it's just in my wheelhouse of what exactly a 11, 12-year-old boy would want to watch in a movie. As I'm older, though, I could see kind of like it's very much painted with a very 80s brush, but it's a magnificent brush. And I got to say,
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun watching it again. What about yourself, Paul? Do you remember the first time that you came across Youngblood?
Well, actually, I didn't see it when it first came out or when it first came out on VHS. So I am a huge fan of Point Break. And so I think about 10 years ago, I just checked it out on a whim because I saw that Keanu Reeves and Swayze were in it years
Mm.
before. And yeah, I found it a very interesting movie because for me, I'm not really into sports movies. And I certainly don't know much about ice hockey because I'm from England.
Yeah.
So I found it a very interesting kind of artifact from the 80s, you know. I really like it's shot like an Adrian Lyne movie. Yeah, the photography is very interesting. And but it's also got that kind of Adrian Lyne thing of being a very earthy kind of drama, adult drama as well. And I also like the way they shot all the ice hockey scenes. I thought that was, I'm sure we'll go into that later, but I thought the ice hockey scenes were really well done. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Sports movies are interesting in that there's some sports that kind of just are cinematic, just like the baseball movie, for example. You know, you
Yeah.
being from England, me being from Australia, baseball's not like our thing. Cricket's our like our bat sport, right? That's what
Yeah.
we're kind of raised on. That's kind of like part of the culture of both countries. But in the movies, baseball is something that comes across really well. There's a certain magic to it. Ice hockey though is really interesting because I could only think like of maybe four or five ice hockey movies that kind of had any kind of impact over like the years. Slapshot with Paul
Yeah.
Newman, that's from
Yeah.
77.
Yeah.
Young Blood that we're talking about now. Then you have the Mighty Ducks movies. That's more for the kids,
Yeah.
like the that stuff. And another one that I really enjoyed, which I think is the best one, is Miracle, the 2004
Right.
movie that showed the with starred Kurt Russell, that showed the young Olympics team going against
Yeah.
the Soviet team in the 80s. That to me is my favorite. Outside of that,
Yeah.
maybe you have Mystery Alaska.
Yeah.
Jay Baruchel directed some movies called Goon, that's about like an enforcer played by Sean William Scott. They're kind of like more kind of like culty kind of things. But overall, there's not many, which is funny because I think that when it comes to if you're going to do like an action sports movie, a movie about grown men just sliding around the ice at fast speeds and then dropping their sticks whenever they want to have like a 2 minute fight,
Yeah.
fisticuffs on the middle of the ice rink, is as as action movie sports as they go. But they don't really make them that much anymore. It's a kind of interesting thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's why Youngblood kind of stood up because I read that quite a few fans of ice hockey think that it kind of misrepresents the sport, like misrepresents the rules and the level of violence and such forth. But on the other hand, it's probably still the best one of all of them because there haven't been that many made of it. So
To me, if I made a comparison to another 80s film, Youngblood kind of reminds me of the Top Gun of ice hockey movies. There's kind of
that's
similarities there, the
yeah,
way it's
yeah,
shot,
yeah,
and I think the only difference, of course, is that Top Gun, the Navy was involved with that, and it was a big kind of like almost like a
yeah,
military propaganda thing where, like you're saying with Youngblood, it was a movie. It's really interesting just reading about it. It's a movie made by people who have played hockey and love hockey, but not
yeah,
necessarily filmed, like you said, that a lot of ice hockey kind of players really speak about. But maybe, who knows, maybe when they were growing up, like maybe they watched it and maybe that kind of rekindled their interest in the sport. That could be a possibility.
yeah,
I know a lot of
yeah,
boxers, for example, watched the Rocky movies when they were younger and then they wanted to box, like that's a
yeah,
possibility there.
yeah.
Speaking about the people behind the scenes, so this is directed by Peter Markle. He directed before this. You ever seen Hot Dog, the movie that came out in
I actually
1984?
watched it 2 days ago as
No
research for
way,
this.
really? Uh,
Yeah,
that I watched that
very interesting.
way too young. I was way too young when I watched that movie. That was
Very
for
adult.
anyone
Yeah,
out there who doesn't know it, you have to. It's like you have to watch his film because it's just almost kind of like almost feels like a parody of kind of like 1980s sports movies, but it's kind of like half a soft porn movie as well. It's like a really odd kind of
yeah, yeah,
combination of it all.
yeah,
Skiing film for people who don't know. So
yeah,
he directed that. He was actually a former pro, sorry, minor pro hockey player and international player for the US. So he has this script. It's called Youngblood. He gives it to a producer at MGM named Peter Guber. Right now, Peter Guber is the chairman and CEO of Mandalay Entertainment. So he's actually like got his own studio now. And Peter Guber played ice hockey. And so they're like, oh yeah, we got to do this. So they had the script, and he said everything kind of came together really quickly. But excuse me, like I said before, it's really interesting how this ice hockey movie can be made because there wasn't really many made. I mean, it's 9 years since Slapshot, but
yeah,
clearly there's a passion for the sport between all these creators. And from all indications, from what I read, a lot of people involved with the movie, including a number of the cast, were all from ice hockey movies. So
yeah,
clearly there's an itch there for them to get something
yeah,
like that made.
yeah. Even Keanu Reeves was a goalie, wasn't he, in his high school?
Yeah,
Nicknamed the Wall.
that's right. The Wall.
Yeah, yeah,
Which is interesting because it gets real. I mean, if there's anyone who could play an ice hockey player, someone tall and athletic as he is, would be a great
yeah,
goalie, I guess, not letting
yeah,
anything go by him. And you see the
yeah,
physicality he has in his other roles as well. Like, there's no surprise there's an athletic background to that. Someone who's not known much for an athletic background, but as a pretty face is Rob Lowe. He's
yeah,
cast as Dean Youngblood. So the movie comes out 86. So they filmed this in 84. So by that time, he's the pinup boy. I mean, to
yeah,
this day, he remains probably the most handsome like movie star of all time, like almost kind of flawless.
yeah,
In this movie, he kind of looked like a porcelain doll
yeah,
almost, just the way he was shot. I know
yeah.
the character was 17, but it didn't seem like once the character needed to shave whatsoever throughout the film. All the other
Yeah.
guys were very had kind of everything going on there. But Rob Lowe
Yeah.
in the 80s, how would you kind of describe him for people today? I think maybe the closest you could do is maybe kind of like a Timothy Chalamet of today as far as a pin-up boy kind of status goes.
Yeah, he was just like the teen heartthrob, wasn't he? And just he was just seen as probably the most good-looking guy in the 80s, like you say. But he's interesting. He's kind of like a shadow Tom Cruise because I'm
Mm,
sure that Rob Lowe thinks, why did Tom Cruise get the career that I could have had? Because they were both in The Outsiders, as was
right.
Patrick Swayze. But it's interesting that Rob Lowe didn't have the career that Tom Cruise had. Of course, Tom Cruise had more drive, I think, and more kind of ambition. But I guess Rob Lowe's not the actor as well, to be honest, that Tom Cruise is.
I think
But
to
he's
me,
definitely got the looks and the charisma, you know.
he's like an act as an actor. I think he kind of grew into a really fine actor, like as he got
Yeah,
older, like in his 30s and 40s.
yeah,
I think that West Wing for me was like when he kind of made that
yeah,
turn, and all that experience that he had before kind of
yeah,
turned into a real fine actor that now you can see him in movies and such, and he brings really something to the table more than a pretty face.
yeah,
Interestingly, the character's nickname. Everyone has a nickname in this movie.
yeah,
Is Pretty Boy, throughout
yeah,
the film, which suits, right? And the other interesting thing about Rob Lowe too, as if you're going to make like the Tom Cruise kind of comparison, Rob Lowe supposedly was like big party boy, like he had a huge thing with drugs
yeah,
and alcohol and such.
yeah,
I think derailed a lot of decisions. But again, compared to like the thing that's always I found funny between Cruise and I think Swayze's in the same camp and everyone else is that it seemed that a lot of these actors in the 80s really got into the excesses of the 80s. The like
yeah,
Robert Downey Jr. is another person you can think of as
yeah,
well. It kind of went Demi Moore supposedly went through like a lot of the kind of stuff through there. A lot of the Brat Pack kind of guys,
yeah,
as they're called in here, went through that. So maybe he could have had a better career in the 80s. Not to say he had a bad one, but if you wanted to reach that Tom Cruise level stardom
yeah.
that he hit so hard, not only is the intensity there, but I think staying away
Yeah.
from a lot of the distractions of the
Well,
80s gave
you've
him
also got
the
that whole
yeah.
Brat Pack thing as well, right?
Yep,
I mean, if you saw the
definitely.
Brat Pack documentary that Andy
I
McCarthy
did.
made, but yeah, they talked about how Tom Cruise very quickly distanced himself from the whole Brat Pack thing. It was a very smart thing to do in the end because a lot of careers suffered because of the Brat Pack thing of so many people in so many together in so many movies in such a short time. It kind of overloaded the public and kind of tired them out. And Tom Cruise didn't do that. He was very careful about the projects that he did.
And he worked with great filmmakers as well. I mean, after
Yeah,
Outsiders, it was Ridley Scott, Tony Scott, Oliver Stone. I mean, he was like
yeah,
very smart. Martin Scorsese with Color of Money. I mean, you
yeah,
could see Rob Lowe being like that kind of Vince character in Color of Money. I think you
yeah,
could see that kind of role as a kind of like a with that what I call a smart ass grin that those kind of
yeah,
actors
yeah,
have.
yeah,
But yeah, I think you're right. Cruise was very smart to kind of distance himself from all of that.
yeah,
So Rob Lowe has said that I found an interview he did in 84 with Joan Rivers. Remember when Joan Rivers used to have a TV show
yeah,
back in the 80s? And he was talking about how he was working out with weights and hockey skating and such, trying to get really fit for this role. But supposedly as a skater, he just couldn't couldn't skate that well at all. They had to really kind of get him to the point where he could go from A to B. And they shot him from the waist up throughout the film. So a lot of the
right,
stuff you see
yeah, yeah,
with his
yeah,
kind of like gliding, that's
yeah,
like a stunt doubles and such that they have in there
yeah,
in the movie. Um, and another thing that's really interesting about him in this when he looks back on the role is that he actually hated doing the ice hockey scenes because he was exhausted by the time he put all the equipment on. And
yeah.
he said,
That's what I
so
would do.
he's like, once you put all the equipment on, it's like you don't want to go out and do anything. But he said
Yeah,
he loved, going out there and
yeah,
skating, but the equipment part of it all, which is
yeah,
what the boots, the pads, like everything, and all the helmet and all that
yeah,
stuff. It would be a bit of a hassle to do it, but that's just part of the game, right?
yeah. I read that Peter Markle actually doubled him quite a lot in the movie.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, and I think there was some
Yeah,
other stunt doubles, Scott McPherson and Randy Walker. And so Randy didn't shoot the same as Rob, but he was a perfect looking double. So
yeah,
Scott McPherson was ambidextrous, so he could shoot both ways. So they had
okay,
like one guy like more for like the shots at the top, and another one guy for for the other stuff as well.
right,
So he had a couple of people helping him out there. Then we go to Patrick Swayze, who by all accounts could skate
yeah,
because he had trained in dancing and figure skating. He's a very kind of like that kind of guy where on one hand he was very artistic, but on another hand he was very kind of macho as well. He plays Derek Sutton, who's kind of like the mentor in the movie. And I don't know about you, he doesn't appear a lot in the film. He's actually quite less than I anticipated
yeah.
to appear. I thought it'd be much more in it. But the scenes that he's in, he just steals the movie away from Rob Lowe every single
Yeah,
time
I
in the
completely
movie.
agree. Yeah, yeah, completely agree. Yeah. And of course, his next movie was Dirty Dancing, so
Yeah.
this was him right on the cusp of becoming a massive star, right?
The Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you'll love.
Yeah. Did you
Well,
read about She's Like the Wind?
yes, so people who don't know, Rob Lowe was on the Joe Rogan show
Yeah,
and he spoke about how So Patrick Swayze was also always very intense. So we were talking about intense actors with Tom Cruise, and he said Swayze was the same, incredibly intense. And he'd come into the set with his demo tapes, and he's like, "I got this song called She's Like the Wind. We need to put it on Youngblood." And which Rob Lowe's like, "This is an ice hockey movie. It's nothing here for that." And then of course they put on Dirty Dancing. It becomes a huge hit. I think it went #1 or what have you. I think it
Yeah,
said.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
um, the intensity that we talked about with Cruise, I think Swayze had that as well. And he not only was he incredibly kind of charismatic, but he anything that he kind of tried on with his roles, whether it be surfing, skydiving, ice hockey, martial arts, he like went in 100%, and because he loved the physicality of all that stuff.
yeah.
He did have stunt doubles as well because it was the norm for that time. But any chance that he could go out there and like prove himself to do things like he went out, and supposedly the stunt doubles just absolutely loved him. He used to go over to their
Right. Yeah,
houses, say hi to their mums, and just like hang out and have beers and such.
yeah.
And he loved to improvise on set. There's a scene where there's a big brawl in the first 30 minutes, and there's a scene where Swayze kisses one of the referees on the mouth as
Oh, yeah,
a
yeah,
little bit of a joke. That was just him improvising on the set, and yeah, I think to me, it's just such a shame that he did pass away the way he did when he did, because
yeah,
I
yeah,
think he could be one of those actors that could still be around today doing really good stuff, and
yeah,
with like big kind of tentpole kind of movies. I could definitely see him in the superhero game doing something in there, or what have you. I just thought he was fantastic, and I think the reason I wanted to watch the film was because Swayze was in it, and you talked about as well. Point Break was a
yeah,
reason you wanted to watch the film because of Swayze. I think when it comes to superstars, he was like one of one, in my opinion. He's just a
yeah,
fantastic actor and
yeah,
entertainer.
yeah. Yeah, he left a huge hole when he died. You could just sense that what a life force he was, and that light goes out when he died. Even we don't know him; we only know him from movies, but you could just
Mm.
sense what a kind of a good person he was. Sad.
And the string of movies he had after this, you mentioned Dirty Dancing. So
Yeah,
Dirty Dancing, Roadhouse, which I absolutely love. A lot of people call it like
yeah,
the
me too.
the greatest bad film of all time. I love that film.
Yeah, yeah,
Ghost, then Ghost comes after
yes,
that.
yeah,
So you have like just
yeah,
like this succession of kind of stuff, and the rest of the '90s was kind of like up and down. In the 2000s, I don't
yeah,
think he chose the best roles, or his agents didn't choose the best roles for him afterwards. But again, whenever he had something out, I always watched it in the movie. And I think Youngblood is like one of the
yeah,
better kind of films he had in the '80s because just what he brought to it.
yeah,
Even like those going back to my comparison to Top Gun, the scenes where they're in the gym and they're all kind of sweaty and oiled up and they're doing the
yeah, yeah,
weights. Like he's there doing the weights and all that. I think he just absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what he was doing behind the scenes as well. I mean, he
yeah,
seemed to be a guy that always took care of himself. Um, Ed Lauder, who plays the coach Murray Chadwick, by all accounts, everyone loved him on the set. Rob Lowe actually said that he said he was a phenomenal man and he was good to all of the kids. He spent time with us. We'd go to his trailer, have a beer with him, even though they were like what age they were. He was a great guy, great with storytelling. So he looked like he was a bit of a mentor for a lot of people. And supposedly, a lot of the parents of some of the kids that were on the set. So like the kid who played Dean Youngblood at the start of the film, you see
yeah,
kind of like a Super 8 footage is going
yeah.
around. Supposedly the parents are talking about how much of a big TV star he was like back in the day as well, and how much they loved his work. But he sounds like
Right.
a really, really cool guy. One of those actors
Yeah,
that you see in films, you don't really know who he is by his name, but you know the
yeah,
face. So by all
yeah.
accounts, it was just excellent with the kids.
He's one of those great actors that he does very little, but every little extra he brings to a character really brings a lot to it. He's a
And
very understated actor. You know, and of
especially when
course he
it
was in one of
comes
the
to
other.
like,
You know,
go ahead, go ahead.
I guess say he was in one of the other great sports films, The Longest Yard, right? So
That's
yeah,
right, and I think a lot of the parents of the kids are talking about that as well. And I really like in the scenes where he's trying to get the team, kind of like talk the team up to like the motivational speeches, but it's different to like how other sports
yeah,
scenes are shot.
yeah,
With other sports, it's like more like
yeah,
rah rah kind of thing, but he one was kind of
yeah,
like more like he puts them down and then he goes, "Well, prove me I'm wrong," kind of stuff like
yeah,
you guys can't skate, you're shit, you're out there, you're being thrown around. And it's like, if you want to go home, you can go home. Tomorrow, you can take your papers. You can take, if you don't want to, you have to
yeah,
go out there and prove me wrong. Which I kind of like that. And the coach it's himself, he'll get in the stands and start beating up the
yeah,
people in
exactly.
the
That's a
in
great
the
scene.
crowd because he was an enforcer himself. So it was
Yeah,
incredibly entertaining, kind of. And he's got
yeah.
the good old kind of like those jackets that they used to wear in the 80s and 70s, those kind of plaid kind of jackets as well, which kind of
Oh
matched
yeah,
the
yeah,
whole
yeah,
look and everything. I think it was
yeah.
incredibly in the film.
Mm.
Um, I want to talk about someone who's really kind of like important to this whole process of getting the film made. The actor who played Dean Youngblood's dad. So his name
Yeah,
is Eric Nestorenko. He actually played in NHL in the National Hockey League for 20 seasons. Um, so he was like really important in the choreography of the scenes of the ice hockey scenes. And not only that, whenever those scenes came out and Peter Markle was kind of busy doing other stuff with shots, he was the one that went out there and spoke to all the actors and said, "Want you here, want you there," kind of put it all together. But yeah, having like someone who's 20 years in the film, but not only that, like playing like a role as well, kind of like as the dad. And later you see the father teach like Youngblood how to fight on the ice. You grab the jersey, you
yeah,
throw it over
yeah,
his head, you do all those kind of tricks of the trade. I thought he was really, really fun in the film and really cool as well. And it was cool to find out that he had all this experience and he was the guy that pretty much, brought the action to life on the ice rink.
yeah. Yeah, it was an interesting idea to have like real life hockey players in the movie because it did give it that kind of Adrian line thing where it's like really authentic and yet very kind of superficial and stylish at the same time, you know?
Another person who was actually a real life hockey player was George J. Finn, who played the bully, Carl Racky, who's like
Yeah.
kind of like the big boogeyman, the enforcer, the goon who's out there that like he's like the nemesis of Dean Youngblood throughout the movie. So he was one of those. A lot of the cast were former hockey players, and we spoke about Keanu Reeves playing the role of Heaver, his name was French Canadian,
Mm.
in the movie. You mentioned before. The Wall was his nickname.
Yeah.
He played goalie at De La Salle College in Toronto, Ontario. And from everyone said that of all the actors, like proper actors,
Yeah.
he was the one that was the best hockey player out of all of them. Which, of course, you got Swayze and Lowe,
Yeah.
but he was the one. And again, first feature film. I think he did a TV movie before this,
Yeah.
but this was like his first. And he just hung out with the players. He was playing cards. He was a lot of fun. I actually found a really interesting clip of so you know who Norman Reedus is from the Walking Dead
Yeah.
series?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he
From
had
Clothes, yeah.
a show where he talks to fellow celebrity bike riders, and Norman Reedus just brings up Youngblood, not knowing that Keanu Reeves was in Youngblood. And he goes,
All
"Dude,
right.
have you ever seen the movie Youngblood?" And goes, "I was in Youngblood." And they're just talking about Youngblood for like 10 minutes, which I found really funny because you wouldn't remember if like, unless you knew who Keanu was, because the role is pretty small. Maybe a
Yeah.
couple of lines. Most of the time he's behind the hockey mask that he wears,
Yeah.
with the stitches
Yeah.
well, in the red. But he's quite it is quite funny seeing such a young Keanu Reeves in his first role, considering, we spoke before, it'll be like 5 years later, he's going to be one of the biggest superstars in the world alongside Patrick Swayze in
Yeah.
Point Break, and to this day, still one of the
Yeah.
biggest actors and superstars in the world. And I
Yeah.
think it's really cool when you watch movies and you kind of see people in their first roles,
Yeah.
maybe as a bit part here and there. But this was a really entertaining one, just because of the French Canadian accent as well. I don't think many
Yeah.
French Canadians would have liked what he brought to the table in regards to that, because Keanu Reeves' accents has never been his strength. So, but still really
No.
fun to see in the movie.
I thought he was playing an Italian guy actually.
Oh, really?
But it didn't make sense. He was Italian, but I was like, okay, okay. When you said French Canadian, I was like, ah, yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah.
He says the word animal. He says a animal like that, like really kind of
Yeah.
disjointed throughout the film.
Yeah.
Um, when it came to the filming of the scene, so it's really interesting things happening here. You mentioned about how they shot the ice
Yeah,
hockey scene. So the cinematographer of the movie is Mark Irwin, again, former player, used to
yeah,
play hockey himself. So he actually devised a special rig where he put blades underneath the dollies so he can actually skate around with the dolly and like
amazing.
keep
Yeah,
up with everyone, which I think is fantastic. And ever since then, that kind of rig, like improvements made to it has been used in ice hockey scenes since then. So he's kind of like very much an innovator in that sense. He also said that they shot the hockey action in slow motion. They did at 32 frames per second because at 24 frames per second it just looked like too much, like over cranked. He said it looked like an old Buster Keaton film. It was just too kind of
right.
staticky and too much going, so it kind of slowed a lot of that stuff down as well, which I thought was also pretty cool. And like I was saying before, like I think ice hockey just as a sport, the speed, the power, just lends itself so well to the
Yeah,
film format as cinema because he's sliding around and those scenes are just really kind of impactful. You hear the skating of the ice, there's great sound effects, you see the speed, you see kind of it's almost kind of like organized chaos out there. All these guys
yeah,
just going against this one puck, trying to get
yeah,
it in one net either way. I think it just comes out brilliantly in the movie. A lot of style to it. Organized style is almost what it is
yeah.
throughout
It
with
it's
the
almost
shooting of this
like
film.
one of the best ice hockey films that isn't an ice hockey film is Rollerball. You know,
You're right. Yeah.
Rollerball's kind of like an ice hockey film in a way, isn't it? It's got the certainly the violence and the brutality and the speed and the fluidity and all that. You know,
Anytime you got someone on skates or blades or what have you, just it just
yeah,
cranks up the
yeah,
momentum of those kind of
yeah,
scenes out there. And then you got like the
yeah,
fighting scenes as well. Like in this film, it's not like the most choreographed fight scenes out there. It's like very much, just two
yeah,
guys standing in front of each other, just trading punches back and forth. And they do have the great montage. You got to, if it's an 80s film, you got to have a montage,
yeah.
right? Where
Oh yeah,
um, uh, Rob Lowe's brother and father are teaching him how to fight throughout the movie, and he's
yeah,
doing his sit-ups and his weights and what have you. Throughout the film is very just steeped in the in 80s-ness throughout the movie.
yeah. It's interesting for me watching it because I'm still a bit baffled about ice hockey, like how they get away with all the violence. Like because it starts off as an ice hockey movie, and then it becomes a movie about being able to beat people up. You know, it's
It's
like,
interesting.
yeah,
I don't know the rules. I do know that they like the refs will allow, like I think they put like on the clock like a minute or so for just two guys to kind of duke it out, get that aggression out in the middle. Like they'll stand
yeah,
there, they'll put gloves down, everyone holds off and then the refs will let them go at it, and then when they're like, okay, that's enough, then they'll just break it up. I think it's just a way for them to really kind of just let some of that kind of like that just that aggression out a little bit in a way that's like just
yeah,
one on one between the two. And the whole, what I really love about ice hockey as well, the whole aspect of the goon, the enforcer, where the role
yeah,
on their team is not to score the points, not to do it. Your role is to really just like, the coach says, I want you to take that guy out, and you go out there and you take
yeah,
that guy out. And there's been many of them throughout kind of like ice hockey, like the history of it. And so the one guy in Raki in this movie being like the boogeyman almost of the ice rink.
yeah,
And then he's kind of like rough looking. He's got like the beard. Like this is it's junior ice hockey, but he looks like he's 30, because he probably
yeah,
was 30 in real life. And
yeah,
then you got the Dean Youngblood, who's like I said, looks like a porcelain doll. And he's the pretty boy. He's
yeah,
about speed, but not power. And he's
yeah.
17 years old, which I found kind of interesting because I don't think these days you can cast a character at 17 and doing the things he does in the movie back in
I know.
1986. I found that very interesting as well. But I think Rob Lowe was like 20 or 21 when they shot the film. But I
Yeah,
like that. I
yeah,
like that kind of like how it kind of leads up to that final fight because it's all about the toughness, right? Are you tough
yeah,
enough to
yeah,
last at the sport? And I
yeah.
thought it was pretty cool. It's different than anything else. See, like I don't think we're ever going to see
Yeah.
like well, baseball's interesting too because they clear the dugouts, right? But has there ever been like a fist fight in a cricket match? I don't think there's ever been anything like that, right? There's probably sledging, but not like fisticuffs. I don't think I've ever seen anything
I'm
like
sure
that.
people have been hurt when the ball hits them. I got hit by a cricket ball in school and they hurt. You know?
Um, so the ice hockey scenes were shot at three Toronto rinks over the summer of 1984. Um, and again, they talk about here in the notes I had how they had to coordinate the players, navigate the cameras and all that kind of stuff throughout the movie. Um, the movie was made, interestingly, on a budget of $4.2 million, which is even
Mm.
by 80 standards seems
Yeah.
quite low, right? Because I know
Yeah.
like usually I think it's like usually 10 or 12 million. It grossed 15.4 million in US theaters, but it was in rental on VHS and aired regularly on cable TV. They even made a PG rated edit of Youngblood to show in the US during the NHL playoffs when the series ended early. So they put together it would be
All
kind of
right.
hard to make a PG version. They'd have to cut out at least 30 minutes from that
You'd have
movie
to
to
cut the
make it work.
landlady out.
Yeah, for sure. Um, let's just talk a little bit more about the cast here. Let's talk a little bit more about uh, Patrick Swayze because I just find him to be just an incredibly interesting character. When I
Yeah.
say Patrick Swayze to you, what are the films that really come to the fore of your mind as like the movies that kind of like stand out for his career?
For me, it's Roadhouse and Point Break, but mainly Roadhouse, I think, because he just carried that whole film and it seemed to embody his kind of persona, And he was an interesting guy, wasn't he? His persona was interesting because he was one of those personas that didn't entirely make sense. Like he was a man
Hmm.
of violence, but he was also a man of peace. And you know, so he came off as very spiritual, but he also came across as very kind of earthy as well. So
Yeah.
that to me was kind of the essence of who he was.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. And that comes across in Point Break as well. He's this
Yeah,
aggressive bank robber. He, but at the same time, he's like a guru kind of sorts
mm,
to Keanu Reeves' character. And so having him play kind of like the mentor in this movie is interesting as well because going back to how Rob Lowe and Swayze were in Outsiders, the character of Darry, who Patrick Swayze played in that movie, he's the oldest of the gang there. So he
yeah,
has to bring a sort of amount of authority and kind of like a guidance to everyone out there. He always seemed like just out of that whole kind of group of actors that came out from the
yeah,
80s, much more mature just than all everyone else.
yeah,
He seemed like more of a
yeah,
man before everyone else, like Rob Lowe for a long time, and I think some of the other Brat Pack guys as well, whether it's Anthony Michael Hall or Robert Downey, whatever. They I think not only did everyone kind of think of them as kind of like teenagers because they always play teens in these John Hughes movies or
yeah,
what have you, but just the way that they kind of carried himself as well was like that.
yeah,
Whereas Swayze to me, he always seemed like a man amongst boys when he did his
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Like a movie like Roadhouse is interesting. Point Break as well. There's a movie I really loved that he did. I think it was in 1984, 85, called Steel Dawn. It was like a B grade kind of movie,
Oh, okay,
post-apocalyptic one where he plays a sword fighter,
right,
which I thought
okay,
was fantastic in the film. But the
yeah,
thing about Swayze that I found really interesting is that he comes from a very artistic background. Dancing, especially, was like a big thing for him, even like ballet and
yeah,
things like that. But he was also he always tried to balance that by being macho. He'll do things
yeah,
like horse riding and football and supposedly he was a fantastic football player, but he injured himself. I think he injured a shoulder or a knee or something like that, and he couldn't go through with it. And that's when he went into acting. But when he does his acting parts, even when he's like the role in Dirty Dancing, where he's like out there doing some great moves and such. He's always like a very kind of macho, kind of greaser kind of character in that
yeah,
movie as well. But
yeah,
yeah, and also Red Dawn, I thought is another one of his great kind of movies as well.
yeah,
I absolutely love with John
yeah,
Milius. Um,
yeah,
then another person I just want to talk about a little bit as well is a little more is Rob Lowe. Um, so when in this movie, could you imagine anyone else pulling off that kind of role to play young, but be the lead of a thing? Because if you're looking at the Outsiders gang, if you're looking at them as a
yeah,
whole, so you got Ralph Macchio, who kind
yeah,
of does something similar. Karate Kid will come out a year after.
mm,
You got Tom Cruise, who again, he's kind of staying away from
yeah,
that stuff. He's not going to be part of that. Maybe Charlie Sheen could maybe pull off something like that when he was younger as
Yeah,
well. But supposedly fantastic baseball player. He had major league afterwards as well.
yeah,
It's almost kind of like a role I think that was almost kind of tailor made to Rob Lowe as he was as an actor and just as a
yeah,
figure then as a celebrity because to have a character named Pretty Boy, he's got you got to search far and wide to make sure you can get someone who can
yeah,
match that kind of thing throughout the movie.
yeah.
But yeah, I just think he's a really interesting actor in this movie. I think probably his biggest hit of the 80s as a leading man. I know he was in Outsiders and St. Elmo's Fire, but that was always part of a
Yeah.
collection. As a, kind of like on his own, it would definitely be like one of his kind of calling card films at a young
He
career.
wasn't in that many hits, really, was he?
No,
To be honest, no. But I mean, I think the same year, it's interesting though, we're talking about how young he appears in this movie. I think the same year he was in the movie About Last Night
right.
with Edward Zwick movie. And I thought he was really good in that movie. And he came off like quite older in that movie and more mature. So you see, I wonder, like, Brad Pitt was saying how that era where he was playing all the pretty boy roles and he was being like, they're really emphasizing his looks in his films. He said that was a very boring time for him.
Mm.
And he got very kind of depressed. And then he kind of turned his career around and started doing more character based roles. So I wonder whether, Rob Lowe just kind of got bored. Like how well can you do in a movie where you know that it's just your physique and your looks that's being sold? And that's an area where Cruise never really went down, really, unless he was doing it on purpose for himself.
Right, maybe. Well, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Johnny Depp, especially like through in the 90s. Like he was kind of like in the 80s, he was kind of like a teenage heartthrob himself because he had 21
Yeah,
Jump Street and that. But he had
yeah,
the wherewithal of working with someone like Tim Burton, where he can take on roles where he can hide the
yeah,
face and hide
yeah,
those features, which by all means, like again, if you're looking like he not now, he doesn't hasn't aged as well as Rob Lowe has because of all the excesses that he's had over the years.
yeah,
But like for a long time, he was kind of like one of those kind of pretty boy actors, but he hid that behind makeup and wigs and
yeah.
plays all these kind of macabre characters, kind of odd characters as well. And I think one of my favorite Rob Lowe performances of all time is have you ever seen Behind the Candelabra, the
Yes,
Liberace
yeah.
movie? Remember
Matt
Rob
Damon
Lowe's
and
in
Matt
that? He
Douglas.
plays the plastic
Yeah,
surgeon, and like he's
yeah,
just his whole face is kind of like just like he can't even move anything. And I thought
yeah,
that was just fantastic in that movie, and it would have been interesting to see him take on performances like that, like hide the moneymaker,
yeah,
and try to
yeah,
do something a little more grittier. But it's
yeah,
clearly something that just he stuck with throughout the year. And again, I think
yeah,
the excesses of
yeah,
his
yeah,
of his time in the 80s. And then he had that Oscars thing, right? What didn't he do like a number, a dancing number of the Oscars in the 80s with Snow White, and it just like it was known as one of the worst Oscar sketches of all time. And then
right,
he
yeah,
had, I'm
yeah,
pretty sure he had a sex tape that came out in the early
yeah,
90s as well.
yeah.
And but now
That
he's
helped his
like,
career, I think. Yeah,
do you think so?
because I think so, because he did the movie Bad Influence around that time, and I think people started to
Oh, the
see him
one
in
with James
a
Spader,
more
yeah.
darker, interesting kind of way. I think it actually
Right.
helped his career. So yeah, in a weird way, kind of gave him an edge. I think that he was lacking.
Definitely, yeah.
I'm
And
not
I think it's
condoning what he did
something.
in the video, but
No. And
I'm
I
saying
think
in
what,
the weirdness of Hollywood.
yeah. Well, I think that he might be actually hoping that Youngblood might bring in kind of a bit of an edge as well because, you
Yeah,
know, he does try to get, gritty with the fight scenes and such, and kind of at the end, he
yeah,
stands up. He has a chipped tooth at the end as well, which is a nice
yeah,
little thing
yeah,
that Mackie brought to the table
yeah,
because he starts off like as a pretty boy, but at the end he's got this chipped tooth, and even someone as good looking as him, once you put a chipped tooth in the equation,
yeah.
he doesn't he's not that pretty anymore.
Uh,
So that's
Well, I
cool.
was reading about the making of it, and they said like when they gave him the scar, it was
Right.
meant to make him look less good looking. But it's like a guy that good looking, you put any scars on him, it's like, yeah, he's a really good looking guy with a small scar. It's like
Scar, yeah.
you can't chip away at that mug, kind of thing.
And the scar
But I read
itself
that,
wasn't. Go ahead.
yeah, I read that Peter Markle actually wanted to make a very different film, right? Like he
Was it
went
something
Frank
more
Yablans.
serious?
Yeah,
More
he went to
serious
Frank
one?
Yablans and he wanted to make something. What did he call it? He wanted to make a movie about teenage bloodlust in the style of Battle of Algiers.
Oh wow.
And Frank Yablans said, "We'll make it, but we want Rob Lowe in the lead."
Right.
And instead of people thinking like, he's a hack for not doing what he wanted to do, I think that Peter Markle did a great job, doing what he wanted to do and working on what attracted him to the project, but also tailoring it for Rob Lowe. Like, because it
Mm.
really does seem tailored for him. It doesn't seem like they've tried to just put him on top of a movie that he's not suited to.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's good work, I think, on his part.
Peter Markle as a director is interesting because so Youngblood was was quite popular when it came out, like 15.4 million domestic on a 4.2 million budget. I imagine the VHS on the sales would have been through the roof because it was a
Yeah,
perfect
yeah,
kind of movie for that time. I mean,
yeah,
it's Rob Lowe, it's Patrick Swayze, it's
yeah,
sport, it's fighting, it's nudity, it's all that kind
yeah,
of stuff, right? That any like
yeah,
hot-blooded like American male at that time was renting out.
yeah.
But then on top of it, after that, he does Bat 21, which was with I think Donald Glover and Gene Hackman. Were in that one. I think it was like a war movie.
Danny Glover.
Danny Glover. First time
Danny
Donald
Glover, yeah.
Glover. Danny Glover and Gene
Yeah.
Hackman was Bat 21. But then after that, he sort of like his career kind of went more towards the way of TV. He did a lot of TV
Yeah.
movies, which I
Yeah.
find really interesting. A lot of directors from the 80s who kind of like had these really cool kind of projects that now seem like more cult movies. A lot of them didn't
Yeah.
really last that long in kind of like the big screen feature film game. I
Yeah.
think by the time the 90s came around and then you had your Soderberghs and your Tarantinos taking over,
Yeah.
they were kind of pushed out of their
Yeah.
lane and they became kind of like TV guys.
Yeah.
But you know, I think filmmaking more than anything else is a journeyman sport,
Yeah.
right? You just got to go where the
Yeah.
projects are, where the money is.
Well, I've interviewed quite a few of these directors who ended up doing a lot of TV, like Michael Lehman, did Heathers
Mm,
and Hudson Hawk, and John Dahl, who did Rounders.
yeah,
And those guys told me that they really enjoy doing TV because it's a real discipline. You've got a number of days to do. You've got to get the script done, and they said that they just got it's hard work, but it's very rewarding. And when you're committed to only making movies, you know, you've either got to work on cleaning up scripts a lot or you're developing stuff that doesn't get made. Whereas when you're a TV director, you've always got work in front of you, and it's challenging you to get it done and to do a good job in a short window of time. So people always think like, for example, Peter Markle, people could say, oh, he went to TV hell. But I don't know about that because he's directing CSI and the West. I
mm,
don't know if he did the West Wing, but he did most of the big TV shows of the 80s and 90s, and he's still working now. So, and quite a
he
few of
is.
those TV movies were like Emmy nominated and stuff as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
primetime
So,
Emmy stuff. I think he's been nominated himself as a
yeah.
director for some of those things as well. And I think
Yeah.
it's another thing that's really interesting. So 1986 is when it comes out. So we're 2026, so it's 40 years. January
Yeah.
31 is when it came out actually in theaters. So
Right.
we're a few days off from that. So a remake is out now in on Amazon. I'm not going to watch it because it looks stupid. Just to just put it out there right now. Just reading the synopsis about, ice hockey player tackling toxic behavior on an ice rink. I'm just like, it's an ice hockey movie. It's like that's not what I want to watch from an ice hockey movie. It's like call it something else. Why call it Youngblood? You could have easily
Yeah.
called it something else. It wouldn't, and by the sound, by the looks of it, it wouldn't have any type of relation whatsoever to this young
Yeah.
blood that we have with Lowe and Swayze because it's just, but beside it being an ice hockey movie, there's something specific about this movie and how it was made in this time. But even though it is like an 80s movie and it's 40 years old, I think some of the stuff in it is still kind of really relative to finding a certain um, tenacity, finding a certain intensity, finding a coming over your fears. I mean, the role of Dean Youngblood to me, it seems like the fight scene at the end was him overcoming something in
Yeah.
regards to he's a great hockey player, but he's getting the shit kicked out of him every single time. And so he's either going to have to learn, he's going to have to get beat up and maybe get injured really bad, or he's going to have to stand up for himself. And I think that's a good lesson for people. I know with my kids, I say to them all the times, like, you don't start fights, but you finish them.
Yeah.
You got to learn to kind of stand up for yourself because it is a
Yeah.
very testosterone driven sport. And people, kids of that age, especially like 17, like Youngblood is, and he's out there with 20, 22 year olds, going out, they're out there looking for their spot in the pros. It's a very kind of,
yeah,
there's a lot of attitude there. I think it's a really cool thing. And I don't know why they kind of had to shy away from that. Are we so
yeah.
sensitive these days that you have to talk about toxic masculinity on the ice hockey rink? I don't get it. I think it's really dumb.
Yeah, it's a universal story as well, isn't it? The character's kind of arc in the movie. I mean, I noticed watching the movie that Dean Youngblood is kind of like Luke Skywalker
Right. Okay.
because
And
he's a
who's
farmhand
Yoda?
who's yeah, yeah, and Patrick Swayze's maybe Yoda, yeah. But he's a farm boy who wants to leave the farm behind, but the father figure wants him to stay behind, and
Mm,
partly because they don't want him to get hurt as well, because because of the brothers' experiences. So it's kind
right.
of Star Wars meets Top Gun meets Slapshot. This movie, isn't it? If you wanted to describe it to somebody who's going to watch it.
Yeah, for sure. I like the character. I like the actor who played yeah, the brother as well. Jim Youngs plays Kelly Youngblood. I thought he was a incredibly photogenic actor in the movie. Kind of remind me of a
Yeah,
young what's that bloke's name? Ed Burns. Kind of remind me of Ed Burns a little bit,
yeah,
like a younger
yeah,
version of him. And there was a very much a
yeah, yeah,
similarities there. But
yeah,
yeah, I love this movie. I like that it's such an 80s film, but I liked a lot of
yeah,
themes that are in it. Cynthia Gibb, who we didn't talk about, I thought she was fantastic in the role as well. I
yeah.
didn't bring her up because I couldn't find anything much about her in this movie. Besides the fact that even though she was playing the love interest, supposedly she went out and learned how to skate on her own time so she can kind of hang
All right.
on the ice rink
Yeah,
with everyone else. But she was great
yeah,
in the movie too. But to me,
yeah,
this comes down to the Swayze Rob Lowe show when it
yeah,
comes to this movie and what Peter Markle could do with the film too. Like we
yeah.
said, not many ice hockey movies, but if there was going to be if we were going to make like a Mount Rushmore of ice hockey films, four, so that's four. I
Yeah.
mean, Youngblood will be up there, right? It'll be Youngblood,
Yeah. Slapshot,
Slapshot, Miracle.
Miracle.
So
Yeah.
what comes in number four then?
I
Um,
don't. I haven't seen like the Mighty Ducks movie, so I don't know how good or bad they are. But
I think
maybe
maybe
Mystery
something like
Alaska,
Mystery
maybe.
Alaska. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking Mystery Alaska
Yeah.
too. Another very
Yeah.
underrated movie, by the way. I really like that
Yeah.
film. A lot of
Yeah.
stars in that film.
Yeah.
A Disney film as well, which is interesting because I think it's a Disney film,
Yeah.
Mystery Alaska. I'm not 100%, but
One of the few
yeah.
family movies that Russell Crowe's made.
Well, I wouldn't watch it again, and you wouldn't call it a family movie. It's actually quite raunchy for
Oh,
a
okay.
Disney
Yeah.
film. There's a lot of
Yeah.
things that are
Yeah.
happening in this
Yeah.
film, and a lot of
Yeah.
swearing and things like that, which I think is you need to have in an ice hockey film.
There was a movie that I wanted to find before we spoke, but I couldn't find it anywhere. It's a TV movie called The Deadliest Season, and Meryl Streep's in it, like a year before The Deer Hunter. Michael
Oh,
Moriarty as well.
yeah, isn't that the
Have you
one
seen
about the
it?
consequences of violence on the ice hockey
Yeah,
rink?
yeah,
Doesn't like one of
yeah,
the doesn't Michael Moriarty get like a brain injury or something from getting
yeah,
pummeled or
yeah,
something? I don't think I've seen. I've heard of it though because when I was doing my research, it came across it.
yeah.
Yeah, that could be
Wouldn't mind seeing
interesting.
that. That sounds like an interesting counterpoint to this movie, which isn't really concerned with violence.
No,
Yeah,
violence is a part of the game very much in throughout Youngblood,
yeah,
for the movie, and I think just the word Youngblood as well. Number one, it's a great name for a character,
yeah,
but
yeah,
also just like the whole kind of notion of like the young man kind of has to spill some blood to
yeah,
like grow
yeah,
into
yeah,
to the hockey player he wants to be. I think it's really cool,
yeah,
and yeah, I just got to say, Paul, thank you so very much for joining me
yeah,
today to talk all things Youngblood. For everyone out there, again, check out Money into Light, film interviews, essays, and articles that Paul Rowland's put up there. The show note, it will be in the link is in the show notes below. And if anyone hasn't seen Youngblood yet, I really recommend you check it out. I'm pretty sure it's available via the on MGM's the MGM subscription because it wasn't streaming for a very long time. I think in the last year he actually went on streaming as part of the MGM. And with the 40th anniversary coming up this week, I really recommend people check it out because it's a entertaining movie. It still is 40 years after, and I think
yeah,
Paul, you would agree that if you wanted to watch like an ice hockey movie, this would be the kind of the first one to start with because it's kind of like a nice kind of like a kind of introduction to the sport without being
Yeah,
too overwhelming with the
yeah,
technicalities of it.
yeah. Amazingly filmed action scenes in this movie for sure.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.